Hey everyone, my name is Troy Myers. Welcome to another edition of the Sunday Night Stonehouse Reader Series. This series started with my colleague and I, Amanda Plow. We're both graduates of the Stone Coast MFA in Creative Writing, graduating all the way back in summer of 2015. And this January, partly in response to the pandemic and the isolation of that social distancing, and also because it's a national program, Stone Coast, and we have friends all across the country. Amanda and I are in different parts of California, but tonight we have two colleagues from other parts of the country. We decided to do a reading series. It's very relaxed. If you're an alumni of Stone Coast or a student, graduating student, faculty, past or present, we'd love to have you on to read. We went for 17 straight weeks into the summer, and now we're even more relaxed, going a little intermittently. But you can always find information about the next reading and see recordings of the last couple of readings at our Facebook page, Stonehouse Reader Series. You do not have to have Facebook to view the page. You can just Google that and take a peek. And last week we had 3 great readers. And so tonight we have 2. The next couple of weeks will probably be dark because I'll be hopefully on the coast and out of signal range. But in August, we'll get a schedule up and staff some more folks. Rick Bass was on a couple weeks ago, or 3 or 4 weeks ago. We couldn't get him connected because of his signal, but Rick is coming back. We'll announce that soon. And Deborah Marquardt has agreed to read for us also. When faculty read, we'd like to have a student of theirs come on with them to talk about their experience as a student mentor or student workshop leader relationship. And we need someone to read with Deborah. So she's thinking about it, but I'm tossing it out there. If you had Deborah or worked with Deborah Marquardt in the program and you'd like to read with her, please just shoot me a message. We'd love to have you. The only thing I have to say before we start is shout out, as always, every week to my mom, who watches in the morning, Monday morning, on the recording, and to Amanda Plow's mom also. Amanda, again, is not only came up with this idea with me, but is also working behind the scenes, producing this show, I guess is the word. Otherwise, it would not look or sound anything at all like this. So I think that's about it. Let me go ahead and introduce our first reader tonight. Are there any questions? Just kidding. You could always send them in. Lots of years in the classroom, guys. It's a classroom joke. Franklin Ard graduated a year before my class, so he graduated summer of 2014 in popular fiction. Popular fiction or speculative fiction covers many genres, and certainly some of the great pieces of literature in English literature, like Spenser's Faerie Queene, Milton's Paradise Lost, Rape of the Lock, are in fact speculative fiction, so has a long and illustrious history. Frank just had a book come out called Back to Zero, and Frank, if you're out there, let's bring you on, talk to you about your book, how you published it, and here's some of your material tonight. So where are you at? Hey, Frank, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing good. I love doing this little thing every time we do it. So thank you so much for agreeing to read.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. So tell us about your book. It's already out, you said. It's called Back to Zero. It's at Amazon.
Yep. So it's out on Amazon, and I originally started as a Kickstarter, which we can chat about. And then after the Kickstarter ended, the Kickstarter was for a special edition hardcover. And then after the Kickstarter ended, it came out in ebook and paperback.
Okay, great. So the Kickstarter got you, I hate to say a kickstart, but it got you rolling, got you out to readership.
Yeah, it earned its name.
Yeah, very good. Now it's been picked up in paperback by a different press or the same press?
So it's actually my press.
Cool.
So I used the Kickstarter to kind of kickstart the press and get the book going.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. Well, what's your novel about, or is it a novel?
So it's a young adult novel. It's a contemporary fantasy magical realism book. It's about a kid who's a high schooler who discovers a mystical power to disappear, and thinks it's going to be his way out of his crazy life where he can run away. ends up being a lot more dangerous than he anticipated.
Already I feel the metaphor. Very cool. Disappearance. We all want to disappear as young adults.
Yeah.
Or big adults. Where are you at, Frank? I said we're across the country. You're on the East Coast?
Yeah, I'm in Mobile, Alabama.
Oh, you are South. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Is it warm down there, or how's the weather?
It's quite warm. It's actually slightly cooler summer for us, but very, very warm for everyone else.
Okay, well, congrats to Mobile then.
Yeah, we get one every once in a while.
Great. It's all your time now, so go ahead and take it away. Introduce what you're reading if you'd like, and then we'll listen very closely.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. So I'm reading from my young adult novel, as I mentioned, Back to Zero. This book is about, as I mentioned, a high schooler who gets in and over his head with a magical ability that he discovers as he's attempting to run away from home. So I am going to just start at the beginning, and we're going to start with part 1, called We Were Doomed. Chapter 1. If high school was a public swimming pool, then I would have been the soupy filter water. For one thing, I had the distinction of being the only ROTC cadet to ever drop the flag during the presentation of colors. So I wasn't too thrilled about starting 10th grade. My uneasiness was amplified by the fact that my best friend Jude wasn't in homeroom. It seemed as though he disappeared off the face of the earth. Mrs. Middleton called Jude's name 4 times in homeroom, looking at me over the top of her glasses as if I knew his whereabouts. Jude had been my friend since middle school, but I hadn't seen him in 3 months. It made me nervous. I thought maybe he decided to stay at his dad's place, where he spent the summer. Jude's dad had horses and 30 acres of land near Huntsville, Alabama, and he let Jude drink beer. Before Mrs. Middleton could call Jude's name a 5th time, Assistant Principal Fogarty announced a pep rally over the intercom. His voice made me cringe. Miss Sandy, our principal, loved pep rallies, and I wondered why she hadn't made the announcement. Holding a rally on the first thing of school was also super weird, but that was only the start of what would be a pretty strange semester. I searched for Jude as I weaved between other students in the hall, but he was nowhere to be found. When I got to the gym, the marching band was playing Eye of the Tiger, out of sync. The cheerleaders did high kicks, and I stared at their tan legs. Any one of the cheerleaders would have kicked me in the face without a second thought. Still, I couldn't resist checking them out. Coach Henry shouted at me to keep moving, and I started up the bleachers. Clusters of more popular students gave me the side eye. As I passed each group, they snickered at me, and I had buck teeth that were spread apart like tines on a melted fork. Eppie Jackson, the biggest bully on campus, had nicknamed me Donkey because of it. I was a frequent target of that brainless turd. Walking up the steps, I felt like a zoo creature. I passed Cynthia Woods and her gaggle of young socialites. They called themselves the Southern Butterflies. Cynthia sat proper and elegant, legs crossed, hands on her lap, floral dress tailored to her skinny frame. She looked me up and down, as if doing a quick mental calculation of how many feet she needed to keep away in order to maintain her social status. I found Marty, my other best friend, sitting on the row with the math and science nerds and other undesirables. Marty was editor-in-chief of the school paper, the Blakely Bugle. She wore big headphones and held a portable CD player flat in one hand to keep the disc from skipping. As she slid the headphones off, I heard Third Eye Blind, her favorite band. "You seen Jude?" I asked. Marty frowned, pushing a lock of hair from her tawny face. "Not yet, Ty." "My name is Tiberius, but my friends call me Ty." My mom loved Star Trek, so much that she gave me Captain Kirk's middle name. She was awesome, and I miss her a lot. The marching band stopped mid-note as Mr. Fogarty coughed into his microphone. He paced the basketball court's center circle, wearing a dark brown blazer that was too small. "Your attention, please," he said into the mic. "Before we get started with today's festivities, I have some news to share." He lifted his gaze from the floor to the bleachers. "Regrettably, it's my duty to report that after many years of service as principal of this fine school, Miss Sandy is no longer with us." The news hit me like a punch to the gut. I slumped in my seat. One day, someone was there, and the next they were gone, as if everyone was part of a big vanishing act. My classmates chattered with the news that our principal had passed away. Even the jocks down front glanced at each other, worried. The geeks on our row held their breath. Marty stared at the floor, rubbing her temples. I felt like crying, but I couldn't do that because I would have been slaughtered later by Effie Jackson or some other bully. The only ones who didn't seem to care were the skate kids on the top row. The majority of them were thoroughly baked, lounging in wide-eyed jinkos. The goth kids stared forward with melancholy frowns, but they always looked that way. It was 1997, and Marilyn Manson was at the height of his fame. The goths all wanted to be just like him. Although I'd only been in high school for 1 year, I knew that Miss Sandy really cared about students. Several times during the past spring, she called Marty and me to her office just to talk about which books we'd like the library to order. Every title we suggested, Miss Sandy asked about the plot and characters. It was like our own little book club. Mr. Fogarty stood in the center of the court, adjusting his round glasses, as if trying to zoom in on each of our faces. He sucked in a big breath and then continued. "Miss Sandy has been promoted to district superintendent." The gym went silent. "That means we have a new principal at Blakely High." Mr. Fogarty jutted his thumb toward his own chest. "And you're looking at him." Marty raised her eyebrows. Shit. Mr. Fogarty had followed us from middle school, where he had been assistant principal, kind of like Mr. Feeney, the principal from the TV show Boy Meets World. Except that Fogarty was a colossal pain in the ass. If all the hot air the man spewed was put into a balloon, it would have had its own gravitational pull. "With a new sheriff in town comes a different way of doing things," he continued. "Mr. Greer is now your assistant principal, and together we will implement my agenda on this campus. I intend to encourage each of you to reach beyond your current plateaus. From now on, I will tolerate nothing less than your absolute best." He paused for effect. "I expect you to embrace this change with enthusiasm and gratitude." In other words, his ego trip was going to be epic. A few of the teachers on the first floor clapped. None of the students did. "And now," Mr. Fogarty continued, raising his right hand in the air, "let's show some alligator spirit." He followed it up with a loud holler as the marching band's drummers started up again, followed by squawking horns. Everybody but the goths and skate kids rose to their feet. The cheerleaders flipped. Marty and I stared ahead. I held my breath, still in shock that Miss Sandy was in fact alive, yet Fogarty was now in charge. I scanned the faces in the crowd for Jude's, but didn't see him. As I stood up, something flew up from under the bleachers and hit me in the back. It felt like a smooth rock. The impact sent a leg-tingling jolt of pain up my spine. I yelled and sprung up and lost my balance. I fell sideways, tumbled into the aisle, and then landed on Cynthia Woods. She squeaked. The other southern butterflies recoiled, squealing like they were being attacked by rats. Mr. Greer and Coach Henry rushed up the bleachers, took hold of me, and dragged me down the stairs. They dropped me on the gym floor like a rotten banana peel. The commotion got Mr. Fogarty's attention, and he dropped his microphone with a loud thud. A couple of the female teachers patted Cynthia, telling her to take deep breaths. I sprawled on the shellac floor, heaving with embarrassment, until Mr. Fogarty stood over me, hands on his hips. I saw up his nose. It looked like fuzzy caterpillars had crawled in his nostrils and died. He yanked me up by the collar, stood me upright. "Congratulations, son. You've broken the record." I rubbed my lower back. Sir, this is the fastest anyone has ever earned detention in a semester. As Mr. Greer dragged me away, I caught a glimpse of a person hiding under the bleachers. We'll continue on, read a scene from chapter 2. I felt like gouging my eyes out with a toothpick by snack time the next day. I'd spent the morning in detention with Assistant Principal Greer. I was the only student in the room. Mr. Fogarty came by for the first 15 minutes and gave me a guilt trip, saying I had a lot of potential and I could really excel if I'd stop hanging around with Jude. After he left, Mr. Greer asked me about my hobbies, and I told him about my collection of Old West figurines and the stories I wrote about bank robbers. I'm also a connoisseur of history, he said, and then told me about collecting coins, rare ones that weren't in circulation anymore. He pulled a catalog out of his desk drawer and made me look at it with him, all 200 pages of it. I ate snack with Marty. She was still flipping out about Fogarty being in charge. Chewing limp French fries, I zoned out watching Tasha Stipe, a fellow ROTC cadet. I had a major crush on her. She had cinnamon-colored hair and freckles on her cheeks, and her smile made my heart drop to my feet. She ate carefully, half a tater tot at a time, laughing with some of her friends who were in the color guard. I felt sick, figuring I'd never be brave enough to talk to her outside of training. Lost in thought, I didn't finish my fries before the bell rang. The second half of the day, I was on cleaning duty. The French teacher Mr. Marjoram, took over for Mr. Greer. Mr. Marjoram was dangerously skinny and talked in a fake French accent. Miss Reese, the economics teacher with piercing eyes and a pixie cut, assisted him. They were obviously an item. Their PDA was stomach-turning. According to Mr. Fogarty's explicit directions, they put me to cleaning the men's bathroom. They sat outside, side by side, in desks they'd pulled from a classroom. The bathroom door was propped open, and I could hear Miss Reese giggle as Mr. Marjoram told her jokes sprinkled with French words. She had a laugh like a cartoon character, and he sounded like a frog being stepped on. The bathroom was sweltering, one of the few rooms in the school that wasn't air-conditioned. It smelled like foot fungus. Balls of sweat formed on my forehead as I flushed the shit-stained toilets and dumped pounds of Comet cleaner into the bowls. I then grabbed the toothbrush Mr. Fogarty had left for me and went to work. The toothbrush had my name on it, written in permanent marker. I had just started scrubbing when I heard someone walk in behind me. I didn't turn around. I'm working as fast as I can. What are you, like Mr. Fogarty's janitor now? His voice was a little deeper than I remembered, but I still recognized it. I looked over my shoulder. Jude leaned against the stall and watched me, his expression somewhere between curiosity and disgust. His black shirt was too big on his frame, and his dark hair had gotten long, ear-length, and curly. It was clippered short underneath. Bangs hung in front of his tanned face, partially covering a welt on his cheek. I don't know, I said, a heartburn feeling of excitement rising in my chest. I tried to keep my voice level. Where have you been, anyway? He looked at me with wide hazel eyes. At my dad's. Yeah, over the summer, but you weren't in class today or yesterday. He shrugged. I found a good hiding place behind the field house. The field house was where the football team lifted weights and coaches drank Bud Light, but it wasn't being used until practice started up in a few weeks. Jude moved over to the bathroom window and fished a bent cigarette from his t-shirt pocket. Fogarty caught me lighting up, so now I'm in detention the rest of the week. Must not have been too great of a hiding place after all, I said. Jude opened the window, struggling with the swollen wood frame. He lit his cigarette, puffed the smoke outside. I examined the graffiti beside the toilet I'd been cleaning. There were a lot of gross jokes, and someone had drawn a picture of a kid in glasses and a couple of gargantuan teeth. My home phone number was written above the doodle. You hit me in the back with a rock, I said, at the pep rally. Actually, a baseball, but yeah. Jude laughed so loud that I was sure Mr. Marjoram and Miss Reese would run in. Sorry, man, I was trying to throw it out on the court to scare Mr. Fogarty. I crossed my arms, and it just coincidentally hit me in the spine. Like I said, I'm sorry about that. I feel terrible and all. It fucking hurt. But it was funny, right? I went back to scrubbing the toilet bowl. The last of the stains weren't coming off. Since when have you smoked? He mumbled around the cigarette between his lips. Look, when important people discuss serious shit, they smoke. Calms the nerves and stuff. What are we discussing that's so important? Mr. Fogarty. Jude blew smoke from his nose. Him being top dog. There was no one Mr. Fogarty enjoyed busting more than Jude. Ever since sixth grade, Mr. Fogarty had been laser focused on Jude's indiscretions, and there were many. But Fogarty had never succeeded in getting Jude expelled. Yeah, I said, it sucks hard. Makes me wish I could just disappear, Jude said. I gave up scrubbing and sat on the grimy floor, resting my head against the stall. Like in this book, man. Jude reached in his back pocket and pulled out a bent paperback. It was On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I'd given it to him as a going-away present before summer. I didn't actually expect him to read it. Jude never read books. I just gave it to him so he'd have something to remember me by while he was away. Who are you and where's the Jude I know? Just had to find the right book. And this one's good shit, he said between puffs. You remember when we talked about hopping a train? Jude and I had discussed it a lot last year, especially whenever Jude's stepdad laid into him. To me, it was just a fantasy, but it seemed to help Jude feel better, having the option to bail if it ever got bad enough. Has your stepdad gotten hold of you again? I asked. He dismissed the question with a flick of his cigarette. This book, it's pretty much an instruction manual for blowing in the wind. He paced, the bottoms of his jeans frayed out over his DC skate shoes. Last year, the skate kids had labeled him a poser because of those shoes, but Jude didn't stop wearing them. A similar thing had happened to me. I wore a black Punisher t-shirt almost every day. Last spring, Epi demanded to know which issue of the comic was my favorite. I never read it, didn't even know it existed. I'd found the shirt at Goodwill and just thought the skull was cool. That earned me a series of punches in the rib cage. But I didn't stop wearing the shirt. I guess that's because I wanted you to think I was worth something, that I was somebody he should be hanging around with. I wanted him to see that I didn't give a shit either, that I could be carefree and break rules too. I was tired of being a doofus ROTC idiot dork with messed up teeth and a bad haircut. In some ways, I wanted to be Jude. Jude may have been an outcast, but he was an outcast for what seemed like better reasons. He was like Billy the Kid, a boyish outlaw burning through the frontier setting of our high school. He spun around to face me. Where would you go if you could take off anywhere in the world? It took me less than a second to answer. Tombstone, Arizona. Well, that's where I'd start. Sounds like a rad place, Jude said. I furrowed my brow. That's the understatement of the century, man. Tombstone is one of the coolest places on earth. Do you even know what happened there? He shook his head. Sheepishly. Only the most famous gunfight in all the West, I said. Jude blinked. You're telling me you've never heard of the OK Corral? No, but it sounds okay to me, Jude said, his lips curling into a grin. Very funny, I shook my head. From there, I'd probably head north to Utah, to the Robbers' Roost, then over to Virginia City to hang out in the saloons. Dude, we have to do it. Jude gazed off into space. Nothing behind us, everything ahead. A crazy adventure under the stars. I dropped the toothbrush. Run away? Come on, you're really serious about that? Bonjour, Mr. Marjoram's terrible accent echoed from the hall. Almost time for inspection. Are you finished in there? No, I yelled back, jumping up and moving closer to the bathroom door. We need a few more minutes, please. Mr. Marjoram said something to Miss Reese, and she cackled. He was probably mocking me in French. Jude took a leak in the toilet I'd just cleaned. I'll be Butch Cassidy, and you can be the Sundance Kid. He knew the outlaw angle was a sure bet to sway me. Maybe it's strange, but I admired outlaws like Cassidy and Billy the Kid because they faced conflict head on. I, on the other hand, did anything I could to avoid confrontation. It was one of the things I disliked most about myself. For example, one time I broke a clay unicorn that my sister Evelyn had made for Mom. Breaking it was an accident, but then I hid it under the couch. I didn't say anything to anyone, and I planned on throwing it away after everyone went to sleep. But I forgot about it, and Mom found it weeks later while cleaning. I felt like a piece of crap, wishing I'd just told the truth in the first place. So what do you say? Jude asked, zipping his fly. I crossed my arms. Why do you get to be Butch Cassidy? And I will stop there.
Okay, Frank, thank you.
Thank you.
So I was definitely pulled in the beginning, the opening part. The high school scene is well written.
Thank you.
It reminds me, gosh, I should try to write a poem about it or something, but those crushes you get, I got in high school, they're so consuming and painful. I loved how that girl ate half a tater tot at a time. In fact, the narrator picks up that little detail. And of course, the cheerleaders are torture sometimes when I was an adolescent. So I dug that part, but then you start moving in a different direction a little bit. So tell me what comes later. Like, where does this head?
Well, I won't spoil too much, but essentially this is what you heard as the catalyst that starts them on the path. This thinking process about rekindling their desire to run away. And so they hatch a plan to run away and end up trying to steal supplies from their neighbor. And that's when they discover this power. And the narrator thinks he keeps it to himself, but thinks it's a way that he can get away. But it ends up being not what he expected.
Wow. Well, I dig it, man. I heard the On the Road. That's kind of the maybe foreshadowing of a journey, perhaps. But it feels like multi-genre already and unexpectedly fresh. And so I look forward to it. I looked on Amazon while you're reading. It's a Kindle. I think it's like $3, paperback $15. It's out there. So recommend it to everybody. I'll take a peek at it myself. Thanks, Frank, for reading for us. We love to have people come back. So if you want to come back in a couple of months and read some more of your novel, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Thanks. You bet. Hey, everybody. If you're just tuning in, my name is Troy Myers. I'm a graduate of the Stonecoast MFA in Creative Writing. My colleague and I, Amanda Plow, have in the summer, not every Sunday night, but some Sunday nights. In the spring, we went through every single Sunday night, a reading series for alumni from the Stonecoast program. We call our group the Stonehouse Reader Series. You can get information about our readings and view past readings, some of which are recorded on Stonehouse Readers page on Facebook. You don't have to have Facebook to access that. So if you're an alumnus, we're always looking for more readers. If you're faculty, present or past. We've had one student who was a senior or a graduating student read last spring, so we'd love to have those students come on too. So thank you for Frank for reading for us. Frank's new novel is called Back to Zero. It's available on Amazon. It sounds adventurous, speculative, and also psychological and sensitive, which I appreciate. It takes talent to write about adolescence well, and I felt that already in that section. So thank you again, Frank. The next reader is the great Brady Kamphenkel. I say great because Brady is one of my best friends from the program. Brady is also the first one who ever read for us in January. He was the very first reader that we had. And this is now his third time back. So we don't mind having folks come on every 2 or 3 months. It works fine for us. So Brady contacted me, said he had some new poems. And so I want to hear what he's got. Brady, you out there?
I'm out there.
Hey, man, you are out there.
I'm out there, Troy.
Are you, is that whiskey? What you're drinking there?
Yeah, it's George Dickel. Do you like that?
I'm a Scottish whiskey guy more. Is that bourbon?
Yeah, it's Tennessee whiskey, mon frere.
Which is not bourbon. Bourbon's only from Kentucky, correct?
I like it. That's right. Yeah, it's more of a charred oak barrel sort of a thing. You'd like it maybe a little bit better.
Okay, I don't drink a lot of hard stuff anymore, but if I'm going to have a favorite special malt, it's going to be Scottish, probably. But
do you like Lafroig?
Yeah, I love Lafroig. I love the Islay malts, Lafroig, Lagavulin. I won't tell the story Okay, but sometime I will. Our Lefroy adventure with me, you, and John at that residency. Yeah, that was funny.
Chase Klein recently went back to that bar we went to in Maine in our most recent adventure there, where we met up with Lindsay.
Okay, who also needs to come read on this program, Lindsay, by the way.
Absolutely.
Well, Chase, another Southern gentleman. In fact, Chase is not read on here. Tell Chase to get on here. He's got a band and he's writing music, and he can come on here and sing and play.
He just had an album come out. It's just his album. His band's called Summer League, and the album's called Hollow/Happy, and it's really good.
Okay, I don't know what musician would not want to present, so we're going to reach out to Chase, or you can do it for me if I forget.
Happily.
So Brady, what are you bringing tonight? Chase, another group from the Amanda Brady group. And what are you reading tonight?
Well, Troy, I'm hoping to read some new work.
Good.
And also just some poems from masters, if that's allowable.
Yeah, I don't mind. That's fine. If you read some other poems you think are fantastic, that's okay, man. It's your time. Did you write last time you read a poem you just wrote that day?
Yeah.
Anything that fresh?
No, yesterday. I have a new poem from yesterday that I'm extremely jazzed about.
Okay.
But today was Sunday, and I was very busy today.
The day of rest.
The day of rest, exactly.
Okay.
This is the day I sat back and said, it is good. You know what I'm saying?
You created for 6 days and today you rested. Good.
That's right.
You have a poem where you compare the writing process to God's creation. I don't think you read it on here before. You should bring it.
I do, yeah. I haven't read it here, but I do have that.
You should. All right, Brady. So I want to hear your stuff, but whatever else you want to share, it's your time. You want to read some of the masters? We're here. All right, man. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Troy. It's a pleasure. And I just want to say how important and wonderful it is for artists to get together this way. Thank you, Frank, for reading. It was really cool being introduced to your work. And Troy's writing is fantastic. Amanda's writing is fantastic. And that they're putting this whole series together is such a blessing. And I look forward, especially to when Troy gets to read. I just think he has a fantastic voice, and he's an amazing host. He's a veritable, I almost said Conan O'Brien. Who's the classic host? The one doesn't matter. I'm going to start off today. So Troy and I bring up Troy because I have this wonderful artist exchange with Troy. Johnny Carson. Thanks, Amanda. That's the one. Johnny Carson. He's a veritable Johnny Carson. Yeah. So I really, really appreciate this friendship I have with Troy that I think is, if you read writer biographies or anything like that, you know how important it is for them to have their communities, or incredibly detrimental to their mental health not to have. No, you're not, Troy. Not to have community. And John Berryman famously said that writers have to have an audience. If they can't come up with a physical audience, they will invent an audience of ghosts to judge them, to support them. It's unthinkable not to have an audience. So the only question is, who are they? And some people are lucky enough to have them. In the form of interested readers, and some of us have to die first, and then hopefully we're lucky enough to have friends along the way. But being an artist is in large part trying to find comrades, and Troy's been that comrade for me. And we've been talking about the masters for years now, just back and forth, sending each other excerpts of poetry. And that's the writer's life. That's what the masters have always themselves done. So I'm going to read this poem by Robert Creeley, who was one of the guys I studied in graduate school with Jean Marie Beaumont, a mentor Troy Myers and I shared. We're lucky enough both to have her expertise, her eyes on our poetry. And I really appreciate the work of Robert Creeley after all this time. He's one of those guys who blew me away. And one day, Stephen Motika squirreled me into one of the maps rooms in the Stone House. If anyone remembers the Stone House, it We got to have fun in the Stonehouse before it was sold off. And he's like, Brady, check out this recording, because he's, night boat publisher in the East, super connected guy, has all of these weird resources. And he had this really rare recording of Robert Creeley reading The Epic Expanse. So I'm going to give a reading. Nothing as good, of course, as Robert Creeley's reading, but I will at least share with you all this great poem. The Epic Expanse. They had come in a carriage which will be less than what's needed over the hard roads. And they stop in the town to get Coke, 3 bottles, by way of a celebration. So will the epic expand, or be expanded by its content. So will words throw up their meaning. Words they have used, will use, are the sound of sound, what gets us. But to go further, he could not stop there, to look at the old people, graceless and cold, in a carriage with, say, 1 blanket between them, to keep out the cold. And it was, he said, it was a coldness of the mind, too. Yes, poets, we had overlooked in essence, and quiet, put back into quiet. We let the tears roll down. Man, it's just insanely beautiful to me. Thanks again, everybody, for the opportunity to bring in people I just love and respect as writers. I expect you to accept this change with enthusiasm and gratitude. Sorry, that was a line from Frank's book. It was The Principle. And as soon as he said that, and I knew that I was changing the programming somewhat, I had hoped all along to say that line. Anyway, yeah. I suppose I should not just read Robert Creeley poems, although it's tempting. I have Kitchen here too, and I'd love to read Kitchen, maybe in a little bit. But I'll share with you all some of my new work. This is the poem from yesterday, since Troy mentioned new work. And I'm sorry if things slow down. I have like a million tabs open. I always do. And I really worry about connectivity. I hope someone will just interrupt me if something awful happens. Okay, guys? Just interrupt me and say, you are impossible to understand right now. But this is a poem from yesterday. I love to translate the work of obscure German poets. Hermann Hesse is far from an obscure author, but as a poet, he's basically unread. And he has a lot of really interesting poems that are, in my opinion, very, very poorly translated into English. And I say that as someone who doesn't speak German at all. But even the great James Wright has done his best. But I just think a very non-literal translation is called for, and forgive me for my sins. That is not the fashionable way forward, and it's not even the philosophically, let's say, responsible way forward. But I do love to hurt the original author's integrity with my somewhat off translations, which, since they're bad translations, you call them okay, I was just checking on my leg. Thank you, Amanda. I'm sorry. There's just nothing I can do except for close tabs. That's an interesting suggestion. I'll just read this poem and see if it lands all right. This is a translation of Mountains at Night is how James Wright translated it. I have Mountains in the Night. Mountains in the Night. The lake has been extinguished. Sleep blackens the reed, whispers, sleep talks traumas into the night breeze. The mountains tower, look down on us, evoke an invasion, a dim, looming threat. They are not using the night for recovery. Their quiet stillness impersonates rest. They are deep in breathing, in their hold of each other, close, closer by the breath, deep in breathing. Arms full of mountainous forces, faint and steep. Passionate attachments that erode them both. So, that was Mountains in the Night, a title that probably fills us all with a sort of a Rocky Mountain high, as it were, but then they're actually quite menacing in the Hesse. So, yeah. Thanks, Frank. I closed that tab. Hopefully that helps. Is the logo of this website a duck with headphones? It's pretty cool. I'm very pleased with that. It's still my time. We've only been doing this for about 10 minutes. And so far we've had 2 poems, and only half of them are mine. And that's still too many, in my opinion. But here's one. Here's another brand spanking new one. This is more like in the voice of Robert Creeley, a major influence of mine. It's extremely conversational, and the line breaks at the end are to be taken incredibly seriously. If you've ever heard Creeley read, that dude paused for a full quarter rest at the end of every line. Just like in music, you'd have a notation of rests. That dude took the ends of lines extremely seriously. I'll try to do the same in this poem called simply, Is This Yours? Is this yours? I was going to work or to visit someone I love. I had not decided when I came across it, where it was, sprawled out in a heap that looked spendy. Somewhere I hope I'm not wrong to think you have been as well. Have you? You don't have to say. But if it's yours, please take it. Or at least tell me I can keep it. Or even if it is not yours, say if I can. Okay, those 2 poems have incredibly different styles, and let's keep the incredibly different style game rolling. Here's a poem by Robert Lowell. I have a really beautiful old 1934 copy of Lord Weary's Castle. I think it's 434. I won't double check that. An early 20th century copy of Robert Lowell's Lord Weary's Castle from my colleges. I teach at the College of St. Scholastica in Duluth, founded by a bunch of sisters. So I have these great old books that they read with these little prayer cards put into the pages and stuff like that. If you're into that kind of thing, it's very nutritious for your spiritual body. And I do think it's a really cool thing to come across Robert Lowell's old Lord Weary's Castle in a big private liberal arts Catholic schools library. And I was the first person who checked it out in many, many, many decades. So I did an imitation of one of these poems. I'll read the imitation after this poem, but here's the original just for the sake of introducing masters into our discussions. I just think I think it's a worthwhile activity. It's called The Holy Innocents. Listen, the hay bells tinkle as the cart wavers on rubber tires along the tar, and cindered ice below the burlap mill and alewife run. The oxen drool and start in wonder at the fenders of a car, and blunder hugely up St. Peter's Hill. These are the undefiled by woman. Their sorrow is not the sorrow of this world. King Herod shrieking vengeance at the curled up knees of Jesus choking in the air, a king of speechless clods and infants. Still, the world out Herods Herod, and the year, the 1945th of grace, lumbers with losses up the clinkered hill of our purgation. and the oxen near the worn foundations of their resting place, the holy manger where their bed is corn and holly torn for Christmas. If they die at Jesus in the harness, who will mourn? Lamb of the shepherd's child, how still you lie. Okay, so that's a very, 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 very different technique. And usually the curse of being an early career poet is that you're always tinkering with other people's techniques. And so this is an early poem of mine, but it sticks to my ribs a little bit just because of its endearing relevance to my own experience as someone who's lived in a place called Duluth, Minnesota, aka the Iron Range in Minnesota. Lots of mining, lots of ghost town mining places, lots of places that were extremely wealthy that got tapped out, as it were. Lord Weary's Castle was way after 1934, by the way. It's not even close. Lowell was a contemporary of Berryman, so I don't know what I was thinking. Forgive me. Iron Range, Minnesota. You guys will notice the similar cadence. This is my best attempt at a Robert Lowell poem. Iron Range, Minnesota. The rusted bell still sound above the church. When struck, each iron hour rolls, reforged. Married men above the moistened soil and mealworm hum. Bloodhounds wince. They smell the sweat of burglars, butchers, butchered, or they track the scent through our besmirched toil and do not slip the hands that break the earth. Here live the undelivered souls, then. These are the lives of the death of the town. The arms of miners follow their pickaxe down the caves of blackened hands. Girl songs echo and fade. The wives are widows. Demons coil, eyeing the eyes of a delving workman's descent from every love he's ever known. Faces and windows dim with the taconite's luster. Fires choke. Ashes are scattered. They sink beneath the ends of echoes. Girls over mines. A tall smoke seeps into the sky, disperses lingeringly. Rock-dulled tools crash down past our fears and show the entombed metal, our mirror. The deer stay off the town's one road. Life steers clear. The bells, not anointed with oil, change key. And it's so far from my natural voice. It's almost like if I wish I actually wrote that way. It's an imitation of who I wish I really were. But I just haven't been lucky enough to really follow in the footsteps of Virgil and all the way up through Milton. I've been way more influenced by not even Berryman, like Creeley and the Black Mountain Poets, guys like those. But still, that's a very fun poem to read. I think, I guess, I generously, I might have time to read one more poem. So I'm going to test this one out on you all. This is my, I think this voice is really close to my actual voice as a poet. And it's a voice that's really, really into Wallace Stevens, for example, who was able to, as Troy recently put it to me quite brilliantly, he was able to balance his abstract ideas perfectly with really sharp, incredibly memorable images. I don't have to tell you all about the snowman. I mean, the blackbirds he gave us. Among 20 snowy mountains, the only moving thing is the eye of the blackbird. That's more imagistic than the imagists or the vorticists. But I have here a poem called A Room Lit by Symbols. And this was my try, and this is how I'm ending things, and that's a confrontational way to end my reading. Troy was kind enough to point out the flaws of this poem, which is one of the wonderful things about having a fellow craft as a friend. So thank you, Troy. But yeah, here it is anyway. It's called A Room Lit by Symbols. It's an imagination poem. It has to do with the idea of just trying to imagine sort of platonically, not even platonically. It's my own attempt to work with symbols. I imagined a room that was literally lit by symbols of light as opposed to by light. So forgive me for, I mean, that's a wretchedly abstract idea. Okay. Thank you all. And thank you all for coming to this reading and for checking out Frank's book, for checking out Lauren Davis, an incredible poet from last week, Troy, Amanda, everyone involved with this. Thank you all. You're all so real, so legitimate, and you lend meaning to our association with that college from which we all stem. So, A Room Lit by Symbols. The room was lit, not by light, but by symbols of light. Their brightening shimmered on our walls, flitted into the deep coves in the even number of our corners, dripped onto the ceiling, doused it. The symbols were bright enough to blot out our screens and lamps. Even our windows looked like our blinds were twisted closed. The light from the symbols was like light when it reflects off of lake water, plays on the sifting surfaces of low branches of trees that are leaning over the shoreline. The light, when it's on them, rippling this way, is an antonym to shadows. If we go outside, if we go to the shore to see the real things that anchor our words to our sense, the raw material, the trees we speak of, useful for comparisons with symbols, the lake halfway between our memories of every lake we've ever gone to see, and a new invented body, a lake bed in our thought we've filled with water. If we go outside, we will see these artifacts of the real, touchstones, reference points. They will drive our symbol lights away. The real will turn them off swiftly and completely as a light switch, as a candle snuffed by an acolyte. After images traced in greens and bruised purple are projected on the backs of eyelids if we let them, almost like how the real light plays on low branches, almost like how the symbols of light had glowed. But we only close our eyes long enough to feel the sun, feel it pressing gently against our skin. That neighborly star so vastly different from the sign of sunlight that helped us see in our room. The eye will fill the world, the dark one where it goes to rest, the bright one where vision upholds the visible. And if we do forget the light symbols a little, when we go to the beach outside our room, outside our home, our mind, when we visit the sources of our thoughts and words, our store of shallow metaphors, we will remember them before night comes falling, when shadows take their place, the antonym we require for that other word. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brady. You've added quite a bit to that poem since I saw it last. I think you sent me a new copy and I haven't seen it yet, Symbols of Light, but I like the additions.
Well, thanks.
But I got to ask a question. The sort of Christ Child poem, was that someone else's or yours? I got briefly confused.
Oh yeah, that was a poem that I was influenced by, called "The Holy Innocents" that was Robert Lowell.
Okay. And the next poem is yours. Each iron hour rolls. About the bells.
Yeah.
That's brilliant writing, Brady. The whole poem. I have not seen that before. Have you published that one?
No. I've been sitting on that one, actually.
Well, I loved it. I loved it. So
Thanks,
it's a little roller coaster watching you as a host sometimes. but but thank you for entertaining and bringing all that fine poetry to us tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks again, Troy.
Very cool. That's what I've got. Are you anything else happening, Brady, for you? You're sending work out, you're writing a little bit, you're teaching in the fall, right?
Full schedule in the fall. Yep.
I'm super glad to hear that. I got to come visit you sometime out at St. Scholastica.
That'd be great.
All right. Hey, Frank, you still out there? You want to say hi and we can all sign off? And Amanda, too, would like to appear.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you again, Frank, for coming on. How did it feel reading?
It felt great.
Good.
This is a new mode for me. So I haven't done the live stream reading before. So that was pretty cool to do.
Good.
Thank you for the
It's
opportunity.
different, isn't it? But good.
Yeah,
for you.
it is for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for coming. Brady, any final thoughts for us?
Stay classy.
Oh, fantastic, man. All right. Thank you both. And if Amanda's not popping on, we'll get a schedule out, probably see you the first week of August. We'll get another slate of readers together and let you know who that's going to be. So thank you, everyone, for showing up. Have a wonderful July. Stay safe. Wear a mask. Look out for the Delta. We don't want this thing to repeat. Good night, everybody.